The song is just good. Amen. Now we will have our lessons by the Andrew Jackson Green family. Sister Patricia Allen, Sister Betty Jean Armstrong, and Sister Hazel Edwards.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
When Reverend Kimberly Faye Woodley Tucker asked me to speak about Ivy Green Coppedge, I said, no, I can't speak. I don't remember anything. I was a child when she was alive and moving about. And we discussed it for a while, and she said, well, what are you saying? You don't remember her? I said, oh, yes, I remember her. But I was a child. I didn't know much. She died when I was in, like, I would say the 4th grade, something like that. And I was trying to explain to Kim why I could not speak. And then she said, well, you might have been a child, but the rest of us were infants, or babies, or we weren't born yet. So therefore, you can speak. So here I am. Ivy Green Coppedge. Let me just say, I'm talking to you from the eyes of a child and from the years of a child. To me, at that time, she was a very strong woman. She was stern. She was strict. She was no nonsense. In other words, she called it like she saw it. She shot straight from the gun. And that's the way it was. And if you're thinking Grandmama was one of those persons who's going to say, coochie, coo, come here, my good darling, you're so cute. No, not that. She would just tell it like it was. Now, I have to say also, at the time that I knew her, she was ill already. In fact, she was very ill. I knew her most when I was about 5, 6, or 7. That's when my memory was strong in terms of her. I might have had a snippet or a snitching of a memory before then, but I'm talking about consistent memory. I was like, preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, that kind of thing. And she was ill. She was very ill at that point. She was a strong woman. She did not let that stop her. She got up every day. She did what she had to do. You did not hear a complaint. She did not make an excuse. If it was something that needed to be done, that is what she did. If it was something that needed to be said, that is what she said. And that's the way she was. Now, what I did not calculate or understand or compute at the time was she was very ill. She did not feel well. She was often uncomfortable. Mobility was an issue. She could not eat certain things. She was on medication. She had a lot of restrictions. But again, she was a strong woman. That did not stop her. She got up each morning and you'd see her reading the Bible. And she'd read it much of the day or throughout the day. And by the way, if you were a child, such as myself, you came into the room, such as I might have done a time or two when you weren't supposed to, she'd read the Bible to you. She'd say, sit down, child, I'm reading the Bible. And she'd tell you a story. And that's the grandmother that I remember, Ivy Green Coppedge. Now, I did not learn about Ivy Green Coppedge until much, much later. I'd finished college, graduate school. In fact, I had just come back into this area when I actually learned about her in a kind of circuitous manner. I was, and still am, really involved in my sorority. And I'd just come back and gotten involved, and we were having a project, a program. We were going to have this big meeting in Washington, D.C. And I was on the planning committee for that. And so it was a local meeting about something. I can't even remember what it was about something, and we would get it together to plan it. But we had the honor of having the national president of the sorority come to help us plan. So she got there, and she came with a couple of her, I guess, friends or whatever. They came. We were having dinner, and everything was fine. And if you don't know anything about the sorority, let me tell you this: there's a hierarchy. The people who talk the most are the ones who had been in there a long time. And the people who talk the least, such as I was, you couldn't say much. So I was tipping around, not saying too much at the dinner, but I was, listening. And I passed by the national president of the sorority, and she said, "Who are you?" So I stopped. "I'm Patricia Allen." She said, "Okay, where are you from?" And so I said, "Wilmington, Delaware." And she said, "Wilmington, Delaware? Well, where are your people from?" And I said, my mother and father live in Wilmington. She said, "Where are your people from?" As if people. I said, my mother is from Winston-Salem, North Carolina." She said, "That's it, Winston-Salem." And she said, "Her name is," and I said, "Alma Allen." She said, "Her people's name is," and I said, "Coppedge." She said, "Coppedge. Bud Coppedge, Ivy Green Coppedge. I know them." And I was like, "What?" I was like totally taken back. And she said, "Yes," and she said, "In fact, they're outstanding members of the community. They were our leaders. I know the whole family. I know every one of them. I was in school with your aunts." And I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yes," and she just told me all, just like the whole history of my grandmother and her standing in the community, and my grandfather also, and they were well thought of. They were positive people. They were leaders of the community. My grandmother, the way she described her, was a teacher and a preacher. And I'm thinking, teacher, preacher, what? This sort of thing. But I listened, and I was intrigued and very happy to have that information. So I went running home to my mom. I said, "Mama, guess what happened? Guess what happened?" And I told her the whole story of how I had been there, what I thought was by accident. And I was telling her everything that happened. And when I was talking in this conversation, I remember when the president, national president, said to me, and she was an educator of people. And she said, "And what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I work in the schools." And she said, "Of course you do. You're a teacher too." So I said, no, I'm not a teacher." So she said, "What are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a psychologist." And she said, "And what do you do?" I said, "Well, I take care of kids." She said, That's what I just told you. You are a teacher." And everybody in your family, that was a smart family. Everybody in your family was a teacher of some sort. And I was like, really, it was amazing to hear. And at that point, I just remembered that whole scenario. I don't remember even why we had the planning meeting or what the meeting was about, but I remember that. When I told my mom about it, she was like all excited at first and said, "Well, then what happened? And who did you meet? And what did you do?" And the other women who had come with her, explained to her. They all knew Ivy Green Coppedge too. They all talked about her. And I said, "Mom, they said she was a preacher and a teacher." My mother looked at me, and let me tell you, you have not lived until you've had the Coppedge stare. You mean to tell me that you did not know that? You haven't heard me talk about your grandmother all these years? You haven't heard your aunts talk about her? And I said, "Well, your mom and all that." But she said the whole community knew she was a preacher and a teacher. And she said, "Well, yes, the faith in our family was very strong. Your grandmother was a leader good. She taught anyone who came near her about what she learned in the Bible and about what she learned in life. The faith was strong." You don't remember the first day? "Yes, Mom, I remember going, and I remember she was a very strong person in the church." And then I said, "But you said she went to school until she was like 16. And see, to me, that meant 16 months, probably 10th grade. She was 10th grade, that's all. But then she explained to me, as I told you, Patricia, that was back in the time before you were born. Most people didn't go to school at all. If they didn't go to school, they went to a few grades. It was very difficult. You had to walk to school. You had to work on the farms or wherever in addition to your study. That sometimes was last. Your grandmother went to all of the years available to her. She went until she was 16, which is the oldest time she could go. And when she finished, she started by teaching those around her. Those that could not go to school because they did not have the opportunity. Those that could not go to school because they could not afford it. It was too far from them. She taught everyone how to read. She taught them about the Bible. She became a preacher, not in the pulpit, but she gave a lesson whenever she could. Your grandmother was a preacher and a teacher. So my lesson to convey to you today is that she came with strong faith in one arm and a strong education in the other arm. And I think you agree with me, you come with strong faith and a strong education, you can go far. You have a gift to give.
Amen.